Hey, what's up, folks? This is Tony Brewer. You're listening to Cogitations. Cogitations is the podcast where we think about things, we contemplate them, we turn them over in our minds, and then we discuss them. Daniel chapter 7, verse 28, Daniel writes, "Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me. My countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart." Now, we're not going to keep the matter in our heart. We're going to talk about it. Today, we're going to talk about lying, situational ethics, dissimulation, and this Islamic doctrine of Taqiya, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've done my due diligence and I've looked it up. And according to Google, Taqiya is the right pronunciation. That sounds like something that I would eat from Mexico, however, taquitos. But anyway, Taqiya. Before we get into the meat of our podcast, I would turn your attention to the QR code. You can support us as podcasters. If you like what we do and you find it useful to you, you may donate $5 one time or as many times as you want, or any amount that you want at www.buymeacoffee.com/Christianity Now. If you scan the QR code, that'll take you to that website. And you can also on a recurring uh, support for as little as $1 a month at www.patreon.com/Christianity Now. And that allows Aaron Dotson and myself to be supported in this work, to grow the work and all that good stuff. We currently are advertising our Facebook page, Christianity Now. And the fact that you are supporting us monetarily is what allows us to do that. All right, I'm done with that. I'm going to get to where I can see your comments. I'm going to try to take comments. I don't want to spend 2 or 3 hours on the live stream or anything, but I would like to take your comments because it seems like this is a very hot button topic. Listen, anytime we look at an issue of ethics, in fact, I didn't let me define ethics. Ethics. All right. Ethics are moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. Now, ethics is also the branch of knowledge that deals with moral principles. And I put forth to you that an individual can have personal ethics. I had a kind of a run in with a listener on a live stream one time when I was talking about Donald Trump. And I said, Donald Trump is immoral, but he is very ethical. In other words, he has a set of personal ethics that he adheres to pretty tightly, although he's not moral. You typically know how he's going to act and react in any given situation, and it's not always good. In fact, it rarely is good. It's rarely is moral, but you cannot take that away from him that he has a very strict code of ethics, and his ethics are loosely, I mean loosely, and it might be giving him more credit than he deserves, is loosely based on Judeo-Christian principles, morality. But anyway, the point is, you can have a strict code of ethics that are personal to you, that are founded in Judeo-Christian values, but you can actually bind more tightly your code of ethics than what Judeo-Christian values or principles would bind. So that's not the purpose of the podcast. Um, Here's the thing, though: ethics that are based in the morality of God never change based on a situation. Okay, if something is legislated by God in any situation, that legislation stands. The prime example would be lying. Do I have to go through scripture and show you where lying is a sin? I hope I don't. Everybody that's listening to this, I hope, assumes the premise that lying is sinful. Sin is deviant from the nature of God, therefore, sin is evil. In fact, if you go to Revelation chapter 21:8, chapter 21, verse 8, we will see lying in a list of really bad things that we typically associate with quote unquote greater sin. All right. So never underestimate or take for granted how egregious lying is. All right. Hello, Sheila Coach. Good to see you. Now, let's start off with defining lying. Lying is whenever you intend to deceive by speaking something that is not true. Okay. For instance, if I tell you, hey, now let's pretend that I haven't looked down and I can't see myself in this monitor. Listen, today I have a bright purple shirt on. Okay, I forgot which shirt I wore. I said something that's not true, but I was just mistaken. I did not intend to deceive you. It may be that if I say, well, I've got a bright purple shirt on, some of you in the comment section might go, Tony, you've got a navy blue shirt on or a dark blue shirt. And I'll look down and be like, oh man, you're correct. So that doesn't mean I have lied. In other words, I didn't do anything evil, even though I said something that wasn't true. Incidentally, sarcasm, figures of speech, that does not constitute a lie. In fact, you can go to the Paul's letter to the church in Corinth. Paul used sarcasm where he said something that is absolutely not true, but he made it a statement as if a statement of fact, and he said it in a sarcastic way. All right. With sarcasm, you throw sarcasm out there like, oh yeah, I'm the richest man in America. Well, you know that I'm not the richest man in America. It is not true that I'm the richest man in America. You know that through the context of our conversation that I'm being sarcastic. Facetious also would fall into that line. There's not a huge difference between being facetious and being sarcastic. I think the main difference is sarcasm probably typically has more bite to it. So think about this. Deception is not a lie. You see, I can deceive by telling the truth. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about it from the standpoint of Samuel going to the house of Jesse to anoint Saul, the first king, or to anoint David, the second king, not Saul, the first king. But deceit, subterfuge, I can deceive, I can subterfuge, and I do not have to lie in order to do that. I can speak words that are 100% true. All right. And really and truly, that is the answer to this ethical and moral dilemma about, well, what do you do in World War II if the Gestapo knocks on the door and says, are there Jews in your house? And you have Jews in your house that you're hiding. Folks, the answer is you tell the truth, but you don't have to give away the position of the Jews. You don't have to cooperate with the Nazis, but you have to tell the truth because lying is always evil. Lying is always sin. And you cannot lie and expect to accomplish good. You cannot lie and have that lie be justified so you can accomplish good. All right. Now, the question is asked, well, what about ... And there are several things that are asked, what about? And I just don't think people have really thought it through. Okay. And I know that there are philosophers that talk about the gradient, the graded goodness, graded morality. So there's a phenomenon or a philosophy called graded morality, and it states that when forced with two options, a binary choice, you make your choice based on graded morality. In other words, the greater moral good is saving the innocent life. The lesser moral good would be being truthful. Therefore, I can dispense with the truth in order to accomplish the greater moral good. That is absolutely false according to Scripture. That is absolutely false according to the New Testament. And what that means is that Rahab the harlot in Joshua chapter 2, when she told at least two flat out lies that she sinned. And people look at that and they're like, well, Tony, Rahab the harlot is in Faith's Hall of Fame. Why in the world are you saying that Rahab the harlot? Why in the world would you say that Rahab the harlot lied or would be condemned for lying or committed a sin with lying? She was justified in her lying. Sheila Coe asked a very good question. I think my only question in this is, where does lying by omission come into play? This is going to be hard for you to hear, Sheila. There is no such thing there's no such thing as lying by omission. You cannot lie by omission. You can deceive by omission. Think about this. All right. Let's go and let me get here. I cannot think of the let's see. It's in 1 Samuel chapter 16. All right. Let me do this with eSword because I need to well, no, I'll just do it here. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 16. And let's notice this idea. Well, you know what? Okay. 1 Samuel chapter 16. Let me do this. And Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hears it, he will kill me. And the Lord said, take a heifer with thee and say, I am come to sacrifice to the Lord. All right. So 1 Samuel chapter 16. In fact, let me see. Well, why can't I see the whole? Oh well, I am going to have to go to my eSword, I guess. I just want to look at the whole chapter and I want to do some reading in the chapter. Bear with me, folks. These live streams don't go exactly the way we plan them all the time. 1 Samuel 16, chapter 1. All right. And the Lord said unto Samuel, how long wilt thou mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill thine horn with oil, and go, I will send thee to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided me a king among his sons. And then Samuel has a very understandable objection to that. He says, well, if you send me down there and Saul's men get word of it, they'll kill me. All right. Verse 2. And Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hear it, he will kill me. And the Lord said, take a heifer with thee and say, I am come to sacrifice to the Lord. And call Jesse to the sacrifice. And I will show thee what thou shalt do. And thou shalt anoint unto me him whom I name unto thee. And Samuel did that which the Lord spake, and came to Bethlehem. And the elders of the town trembled at this coming, and said, comest thou peaceably? All right, we can be done there. This gets us what we need. All right. So here's where the deal. There's no such thing about a lie about a mission, because not divulging all of the information that's in your head is your right. You are not obligated to divulge all the information that is in your head. And let me say something first. If I were ever, and I have been sworn in, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I say I do, with the caveat of I do not swear to tell the whole truth. In other words, I'm not going to volunteer any information. You are not entitled to the information that I have in my head. And I do not tell the whole truth. I'm not going to divulge everything. For instance, somebody might ask, well, Tony, what happened with X individual or Y individual? I will tell you the truth, but you're not going to get the whole truth. You're not going to get everything from me because you're not entitled to everything. Now, the question is, and this arose in a comment section. What about isn't a half truth a whole lie? No, that's something that it's not logical. It's irrational. There are two statements that stand alone from 1 Samuel 16. So let's run these scenarios because what God told Samuel is based on a scenario. Samuel's objection was, how can I go down to the house of Jesse? If Saul hears about it, he'll kill me. So Samuel had to use his imagination to be like, okay, what would happen if men from Saul stop me and say, what are you doing traveling south? Okay. Now, you're traveling south. Saul's men ask you, what are you doing? You have two options. You have two statements that you can make. You can say, I am going to the house of Jesse to anoint a king over Israel that is not of Saul's bloodline, and you will die. Or you're carrying this heifer, and you can say, I am going to the house of Jesse to sacrifice this heifer to the Lord. Both of those statements are 100% true. If you say, I am going to the house of Jesse to sacrifice this heifer to the Lord, and Saul's men say, oh, okay, we'll see you. It's not your fault that they didn't ask any follow-up questions. You have not lied to them. You have, however, acted discreetly, and you have practiced what is called subterfuge. All right? You have deceived them. You have deceived them into thinking that you are not going down there for any reason that is going to be contrary to the wishes of Saul. That you did not tell a half truth. You did not lie by omission. You told the truth, and the statement you made was 100% true. Sheila Cole says, then at times my kids have gotten in trouble for being asked a direct question and giving half an answer. Maybe they shouldn't have gotten in trouble for that. Maybe we should learn how to ask better questions. I'll give you an example. A lawyer will tell you when you go on the stand, you do not volunteer any information and you only answer the question that is asked. Let me give you an example of a seemingly innocuous question that you only need to answer what is asked. A lawyer might say, well, Mr. Brewer, do you know the time? I look down at my watch. Yes, yes, sir. I do know the time. Now, most people, like if I meet you on the street and I say, hey, excuse me, do you know the time? Most people, they assume the question behind the question. All right. Most people, do you know the time? Oh, yeah, it's 20 minutes after 12. All right. But that's not the question I ask. I ask, do you know the time? My response is, yes, I do. If I'm on the stand and I'm being interrogated, I'm only going to answer the question that was asked in the way it's asked. That doesn't mean I'm a liar. That doesn't mean I'm dishonest. That means I'm trying to protect myself. Now, when it comes to children, you may need to train them whenever they're dealing with somebody who is not antagonistic to be more open, okay? To be more transparent. Let me give you an example. First off, let me get Ben Grady What if you're repeating something that is a lie, but you think it's the truth and state it to whoever as the truth? Say it's something you heard from the news pushing a propaganda that's easily proven false. If you looked at the evidence or yourself, or a lie that you've been fed via society since birth, it's dangerous to look at how many people are teaching false doctrine because it was just what they were taught. Correct. And that's the thing. If you repeat something that's not true, that's probably your culpability in that is dependent upon the ease of the ease with which that truth is or lie is debunked. Okay. But yeah, good comment there. But yeah, so with when it comes to our children, if let's say that your curfew is 10 p.m. and your child rose up at 11, and you ask your child, where have you been? Well, I've been with Tim and we were at Walmart. Okay, your child clearly has a sack of goodies from Walmart. If all you do is leave it there, it's probably your fault as a parent that you didn't figure out where they actually went, because your child told the truth 100%. As a parent, you need to follow up. Is that the only place you went? Now, if the answer after that is no, and they actually went to the bowling alley to bowl a few frames, then they lied. But if they went to Walmart and you as a parent say, where were you? It's 11 o'clock. Where were you for the last hour? Well, we went to Walmart. Well, is that the only place you went? That needs to be your follow-up. It really does. And how you do these follow-up questions will depend on how much you trust your child or how much you trust the individual with whom you're speaking. So back to 1 Samuel chapter 16. Samuel told 100% the truth when he said, if we don't know what happened, we don't know if he was stopped, but if Saul's men would have stopped him on the road, and then Samuel could have, again, he was instructed to say, I'm going down there to sacrifice to the Lord. And if they didn't follow up with any questions, that's not his fault. So Samuel surely didn't lie. God certainly didn't tell Samuel to lie. And deceiving Saul's men would not have been sinful because A, God told him to do it, and B, he's telling the truth. My kids learned that it was a rarity that I asked questions I didn't already know the answer to. So it's in their best interest to spill it. Sure, and yeah, I agree with that. But and that may be the rule that you have in your house, and you may punish them for not being forthcoming. But to punish them for lying would be wrong because they didn't lie. They're trying to mislead you. They're trying to get one over on you. They are being nefarious, but they didn't lie. Let me give you an illustration to help you with this. Let's say, and I use this illustration all the time. Let's say that I go to, let's say at noon, I leave the house and I say, hey, LaBeth, my wife, I'm going to Walmart to get some groceries. Well, I don't come back till 4 in the afternoon. So I've been gone 4 hours. Whenever I walk in the door, she says, where have you been? And I smile and I hold up I said, I've been to Walmart. And she says, oh, okay. I really haven't been to Walmart for 4 hours. I went to another place. I went to a travel agent and I booked a cruise and I planned a destination vacation to the Bay of Alaska, and we're going on this cruise and it's going to be fun. And it took that long to do. Now, is what I did evil? Did I do anything that was bad? Well, I don't think anybody in the world, and anybody that I've ever asked, would not say, well, Tony, what you did was bad. You lied to your wife. How could you lie to your wife? No. I did deceive her. I misdirected her. I practiced subterfuge, But I didn't lie. I have been to Walmart, and we've been married a couple of decades now, and she trusts me, so she's not gonna be prompted to ask any more questions. Now, if she said in this scenario, if she says, "Tony, you've been gone 4 hours. Is that the only place you went?" With our relationship, I'd smile and I'd say, "Don't ask questions you don't know the answer to. I went to Walmart, and that's all I'm saying. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it." And she would understand that I was doing something that I didn't want her to know about, and she would trust me, and she wouldn't push it. But now if she didn't trust me, she would push it, and she would say, "So where did you go besides Walmart?" And I would have to tell her I went to the travel agent, or I would have to um, deflect, okay? But I couldn't say the only place I went is Walmart because that would be a lie. And it doesn't matter the reason I'm lying. Lying is evil. Now, what if, however, I went to Walmart and I got groceries that well, actually, Sheila, there's not a very thin line between lie and deceive. It's just as thin as it's just as infinitesimally small as it is exponentially large because it's a very hard boundary. Deceit, it's a lie if you don't tell the truth. All right, it's a lie if you don't tell the truth. It's deceit. All right, it's deceit if you tell the truth. And we deceive in many different ways. We deceive and misdirect and deflect. It's 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 not deceit is amoral. All right. It's not virtuous. It's not a virtue. It's not a vice. It's amoral. All right. It's what you do with it. And remember, planning a destination vacation with the cruise and all that, that me just me practicing subterfuge with my wife is morally neutral. It's amoral, but the entire thing is considered a good because I'm doing something good for my wife. But if I left the house at noon and stayed gone till 4 p.m. and I come back with groceries and she said, "Tony, where have you been?" I said, "Well, I went to Walmart and I got groceries." Or I said, "I went to Walmart and I got groceries." She would be like, "Well, okay, well, that's, where did you go anywhere else?" Well, if I said no, I'd be lying. But what if I went to the pool hall and I drank beer and I flirted with women and I played pool? And then I came back and I said, "Well, I went to Walmart to buy groceries." Is that good? Well, no. That entire scenario is immoral because I have harmed my wife. I have went against something that I've done something. I've sinned against my wife. I've done something that she wouldn't approve of. But the deception there by itself is amoral. I used the deception to do something bad, where in the first scenario, I used the deception to do something good. Well, now you're gonna have to find a travel agency in Walmart. Yeah, I use this illustration all the time, and typically when I use this illustration, people get it. They're like, "Oh, okay, I see what you mean." So with the first situation where I planned the vacation and everything like that, or I planned a surprise party or whatnot, people say, "No, you didn't do anything bad. You did something really nice for your wife." Well, what about the second one? Well, no, you did something really, really bad. Well, the the action as a whole is the golden thread. The variable is the intent. The variable is, what the intent. What did you intend to do? Well, I harmed my wife with one, and that's bad, and I helped my wife with the other, that's good. But both were founded in subterfuge and deceit. But I didn't lie. I never lied to her. The second one, I'm guilty of sin, but not the sin of lying. Anyway, Now let's think about this. Here's one that is thrown out whenever we talk about lying is sin. Um, let's go to Rahab the harlot. All right, let's go to Joshua chapter 2. Let's read this. And yeah, this is the one that caused all kinds of problems because people say, well, Rahab the harlot, she's in Faith Hall of Fame. And James chapter 2, James says that her works justified her. And then my brethren are saying that one of the works that justified her is the lying. And I'm going to show you from Scripture how this cannot be. It was not the work of lying that justified her. It was the work of hiding the spies and sending the spies out in a different direction that the king's men went. All right. So let's look at Joshua chapter 2. And Joshua the son of Nun sent out to Shittim 2 men to spy secretly, saying, go view the land, even Jericho. And they went and came into a harlot's house named Rahab. And it was told to the king of Jericho, saying, behold, there come in hither tonight of the children of Israel to search out the country. I need some better lighting. Anyway, we know they're spies here. The king was told they're spies. All right, verse 3 of chapter 2 of Joshua. And the king of Jericho sent unto Rahab, saying, bring forth the men that are come to thee, which are entered into thine house, for they are come to search out the country. And the woman took the 2 men and hid them, and said thus, there came men unto me, and I wist not whence they were. And it came to pass about the time of the shutting of the gate, when it was dark, that the men went out. Whither the men went, I wot not. Pursue after them quickly, for ye shall overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof of the house, and hid them with the stalks of flax, which she had laid in order upon the roof. And the men pursued after them of the way of the Jordan unto the fords. And as soon as they which pursued after them were gone out, they shut the gate. And then, of course, Rahab the harlot came. Now, here's the deal. If you just read a couple of verses of this, it sounds like Rahab had to come up with this on the fly and hide the spies on the fly. That's not true. Before the king had sent, grammatically, the verse here, verse 6, but she had, past tense, brought them up to the roof. So when the king sent the messenger to Rahab, Rahab had already hid the spies. So like she had time to concoct this. And quite frankly, she could have, in other words, she possessed the ability, and she should have, she had the obligation, been able to get the same result without lying. The lying was sinful. She still accomplished the goal, but she lied in order to do it. All right? And you can go to James chapter 2, you can go to Hebrews 11, and the lie is not talked about. Her action in hiding the spies and sending them out is. Now you may say, well, Tony, part of that was the lie. Yeah, but there's a lot of people in Faith Hall of Fame who did very, very bad things that are still in Faith Hall of Fame. Rahab was a character like any other. The overarching theme of her life was faithfulness. She didn't do everything correctly. She didn't do everything the way God would have wanted her to do it. She should not have lied. She didn't have to lie, but she lied. Now, let's go to Romans chapter 3. Well, actually, might as well get it all while we're there. Let's go to Exodus chapter 1. because people say, well, what about the what about the midwives? I couldn't think of midwife to save my life. Let's see if I got enough light here to read. All right. I'm going to start reading in Exodus chapter 1, verse 15. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Sephora, and the name of the other Pua. Incidentally, there are scholars, very reputable scholars, and many of them who say that the midwives were Egyptians, but there was a subset of the midwives that were assigned to the Hebrews. That's why they were called Hebrew midwives. Now, I think that's very interesting. All right. And that plays a part in what we're going to talk about with this section of scripture. Now, and he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then you shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then then she shall live. But the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men of the men children alive. Again, I apologize. I need bigger print or better lighting. And the king of Egypt called the midwives and said unto them, why have you done this thing and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto the Pharaoh, well, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered ere the midwives come into them. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. Folks, where's the lie? The text does not necessitate that these Hebrew midwives lied. It is 100% true. Like, there's no reason for us to doubt what they said. Hey, the Hebrew women, they're more lively than the Egyptians, and they have their they birth their children before we get there. Now, it very well could be the case, because the text seems to the text communicates that the Hebrew midwives were active. In other words, they didn't save the men children alive passively. They actually acted. So what would be their action? Well, it could be that whenever the midwives were called for by the Hebrews, because these midwives feared God, they said, you know what? We're going to stand around and we're going to talk a little bit before we go to these Hebrews' houses. Now, the Hebrew women are lively, they are healthy, and they were birthing their children. They were delivering their children without the midwives before the midwives could get to the house. It's not their fault that Pharaoh didn't ask, well, why do you think they're delivering before you get there? Well, it's because we're standing around having a midwife conference and we're waiting. You see, Pharaoh didn't ask that. It's not their fault. I do not believe for a minute that the midwives lied. They told the truth, and Pharaoh interpreted that the way he wanted to interpret it. It's not their fault that he didn't ask any follow-up questions. Good to see everybody in the live stream, by the way. Thank you so much. Be sure and be the algorithm for us. If you're watching or listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and share the YouTube video to your Facebook page. And thank you so much. And if you're listening on Christianity Now, be sure and follow and like and subscribe to Christianity Now. So there's how I deal with the midwife situation. The text doesn't demand the conclusion that the Hebrew midwives lied. So I don't have to deal with the issue of situational ethics from the standpoint of the Hebrew midwives. All right. Now, let's go to Romans chapter 3. Before we go to Romans chapter 3, notice we've dealt with Rahab the harlot. She absolutely lied. But it doesn't matter. She's still in Faith Hall of Fame. Her actions still justified her Her actions and her belief worked in tandem and produced faith, and she was justified by her faith. But just like every other human on Faith Hall of Fame, she sinned. But the overarching theme of her life was faithfulness. That's why she's in Faith Hall of Fame. She's not in Faith Hall of Fame because she lied, folks. Lying is evil. It's always evil. It's always sinful. And we do not function with graded morality. In other words, when faced with two options, I don't choose the thing that is morally greater good than the other. I'm not let off the hook. If somebody knocks on the door and I have Jews in my attic and they say, "Are there Jews in your attic?" I don't have to open the door and say, "Yes, yes, Gestapo, they are in the attic. If you go up now, you'll be able to catch them." I don't have to do that. But I can't lie to them either. I can't lie to them either. And we're going to see that from Romans chapter 3. Let's go to Romans chapter 3 and let's talk about, because I was accused of not knowing the context of Romans chapter 3. And my response to that is, I don't think people know how to think anymore. I don't think people understand what context is and how to put something in its context and look at the first century application and find a way to apply it to the first century. We're going to see that Romans chapter 3, there is this principle of we can't do evil that good may come, and it applies to us in the first century. Don't forget to address Elisha in 2 Kings 6. I may not address that. It's not an oversight on my part. But again, I'm running out of time. I'm already 42 minutes. So we're going to go to Romans chapter 3, and we're going to put this in its context, because here's the thing. Once you put Romans chapter 3 in its context and you figure out what Paul's teaching, you don't have to go to Rahab. You don't have to go to Elijah. You don't have to go to the Hebrew midwives. You don't have to go to 1 Samuel. Sorry, 1 Samuel 16. I couldn't remember if it's 1st or 2nd Samuel. Ain't that terrible? All right, listen to it. All right, chapter 3. Well, first off, Romans is a treatise on justification, the thesis of which is Romans chapter 1, verse 16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation, to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. You can only be justified through the gospel of Jesus Christ. There was no justification under the patriarchal system. That's the rest of Romans chapter 1. The priesthood was changed, and then God gave them up to their vile affections, to a reprobate mind, changed the priesthood, changed the law. Now we're in the Mosaic age, and chapter 2 is Paul addressing the Jews. But thou art inexcusable, O man, whoever you are who judge, for in whatever you judge another, you condemn yourself, for you who judge practice the same things. Okay. So now he's getting on the Jews. But in order not to be too heavy on the Jews, he goes in chapter 3 and he says, and what he's doing, he's doing this. A modern day philosopher that does this very well is Jordan Peterson. When Jordan Peterson gives a lecture, he'll make a statement and then he'll go, "But look, I know what you're thinking, right? How in the world can this be true if X, Y, and Z?" Well, let me tell you about X, Y, and Z. And he'll cut people off at the pass by surfacing his own pushback. And that's what Paul is doing. He's surfacing his own objection here. If you're reading this and you read Romans 1 and 2, if you're a Jew, here's the objection you might raise. Well, what advantage then hath the Jew, or what profit is there in circumcision? And Paul says, I'm glad you ask. Much in every way, chiefly because to them were committed the oracles of God. That's the advantage the Jew has. That's the advantage there is in circumcision. For what if some did not believe? Will their unbelief make the faithful the faithfulness of God without effect. In other words, it doesn't matter if some of the Jews didn't believe. Their unbelief is not going to make God impotent or ineffective. Certainly not. Indeed, let God be true and every man a liar, as it is written, that you may be justified in your words and may overcome when you are judged. So that's a general principle there. Let God be true and every man a liar. And again, this is where Paul is surfacing his own objection. He's basically stating, and let me go to my trusty rusty e-sword. I love the way that this is rendered in hold on a second. I don't have this translation on my. Let me do this on my phone. I don't have it on my computer. It's called the. Hold on a second. I'll tell you. The International Standard Version. I've been doing some research on it. It's very interesting. Listen to this. I love the way it's rendered in the International Standard Version. The International Standard Version. Anyway, I don't have to extol its virtues. I've done some research. I trust it, and there's no reason not to trust it. What if some of the Jews were not, or what if some of the Jews were unfaithful? Their unfaithfulness cannot cancel God's faithfulness, can it? Of course not. God is true, even if everyone else is a liar. And that's fine. That works. That's a good translation, and that's a good translation in the King James, the New King James, any translation of the Bible you read. That's what you should get. That's what Paul is saying. That's what Paul is saying. In other words, chapter, what is it? Verse 4 of chapter 3. Let God be true, every man a liar. Let God be true, every man a liar. So that's what you should get out of this. All right. Terry Brooks, hold on just a second. I'll deal with that in a moment. But that's a good question. I'll talk about Abraham before we get off the podcast, even if we run late, which we're definitely going to run late. What if some of the Jews were not unfaithful? Their unfaithfulness cannot cancel God's faithfulness, can it? Of course not. God's true. So let God be true, even if everyone else is a liar. Let every other man be a liar. So that's the thing. The fact that men, and Paul, in the first part of this, Paul is saying, if some people were unfaithful, that doesn't mean God is unfaithful. It doesn't matter if every man on earth is a liar. God is true. So he's using lying to get this point across. He's using lying to teach this truth, that God is who God says he is. Regardless of anything else, God is faithful even if everybody else is unfaithful. God is true even if everybody else is a lie. God is a truth speaker, a truth teller, even if everyone else is a teller of lies. All right. And he goes on. You are right when you speak and win your case when you go to court. Verse 5 of the International Standard Version. But if our unrighteousness serves to confirm God's righteousness, what can we say? And so this is Paul here again, surfacing the conflict. He's surfacing the pushback. Now I can't think of the word. He's surfacing the argument, maybe. That's not what he's surfacing I can't remember. I can't think of it. But anyway, he's surfacing the we're going to say conflict. If our unrighteousness serves to confirm God's righteousness, what can we say? God is not unrighteous when he vents his wrath on us. Is he? I am talking in human terms. In other words, this, and I'm using this to segue into the next section. He's saying this wisdom is not from above. This wisdom is from humans. I'm speaking in human terms. And of course, God's not unrighteousness. God is not unrighteous when he vents his wrath towards us, is he? Well, of course not. Otherwise, how could God judge the world? So what the Jews were saying is our unrighteousness shows forth the righteousness of God because we can still be counted faithful and be unrighteousness. Unrighteous. It shows how good God is. So therefore, then, how can God judge us? That's what the Jews were saying. That's the pushback that Paul was surfacing here. Now, then Paul gives an illustration again. He says, "Of course not. Otherwise, how could God judge the world? For if through my falsehood," all right, I believe that's verse 7, the New King James. The New King James says lie. The King James says lie. If through my falsehood God's truthfulness glorifies him even more, why am I being condemned as a sinner? Now, it is true that in the context, you can go back up and you can see these terms that are related. In other words, let God be true and every man a liar. But that is not limiting this principle to people who are unfaithful versus people who are faithful. Paul is actually using, he's equating that. He's boiling it down and say, let's look at this one pinpointed, a lie. Let God be true and every man a liar. If every man is a liar, God still tells the truth. Now, if by my lie, God's truth is seen the more, then how can God judge me for lying? Well, the answer is he can, because can we say, as some people slander us by saying that we say, let us do evil that good may result? They deserve to be condemned. All right. So if by my lie, God's truthfulness is glorified, or God's truthfulness glorifies him, how can I be judged a sinner? Now, big picture, if my unfaithfulness or unrighteousness, if my disbelief glorifies God even more, how can my disbelief be used against me? And so Paul boils it down. If my lie shows the truth of God and glorifies him, how can I be judged a sinner for my lie? Or can we say, and this is verse 8, and this is the one that punches it home. And why not say? So depending on which translation, or can we say, Paul in the New King James, it's, and why not say, let us do evil that good may come? It's presented as a rhetorical question in verse 8 of the New King James, and in verse 8 of the International Standard, it's just presented as a question, can we say? It's still rhetorical, but it hits a little different. Let us do evil that good may come. The answer is we can't. We cannot do evil to accomplish good. That is general. And that doesn't matter what situation to which it's applied. It doesn't matter specifically what Paul is talking about in the previous verses. He goes general principle here. We cannot do evil that good may come. Rahab the harlot did evil so that good may come. God still used her. She died in faith. So evidently, because of the blood of Jesus Christ, that didn't cost her eternity. But she still lied. It was still a sin. All right. Same way with anybody who lies. It doesn't matter what reason. If the Gestapo Nazis knock on the door in World War II and you've got Jews in your attic and they say, you got Jews in your attic? If you say, no, there are no Jews in my attic at this time, then you have lied. You have lied. Now, it may be that the Gestapo says, okay, well, we'll go down to the next house. It's a good thing that the innocent lives were spared, but you still lied. Now, question, The world is full of innocent lives, is it not? Would you be willing to trade your own soul for innocent lives? For all the innocent lives in the world? I am not. I am not willing to commit sin to save an innocent life. I am not even willing to commit sin to save all of the innocent lives. Michael Knowles, a professed and practicing Catholic, he gets asked this question in open forums all the time, and it's asked as a gotcha to embarrass him. But and I hope there are no children listening. I'm going to be blunt here. The question is asked of Michael Knowles: would you perform oral sex on a man in order to save the world? Well, what do you think Michael Knowles' answer is? Well, the answer is no, I would not, because we can't do evil that good may come. So I wouldn't perform oral sex on a man in order to save the world, because you can't do evil that good may come. I'm not going to lose my soul to gain the whole world, because I've really not gained anything, have I? What shall a man give in exchange for his soul? I'm not going to trade it for an innocent life, whether it's 1 or 100 billion. Now, hopefully I've cleared that mess up about Romans chapter 3. Romans chapter 3, verse 8 can be lifted straight off the page and taken by itself. The rhetorical question, can we say, let us do evil that good may come? The people who do say that need to be condemned. Situational ethics is false. Rahab the harlot lied. She sinned when she lied. She's also in Faith's Hall of Fame. That means that she found absolution, forgiveness for that sin. All right. Now, and again, let's do this. There is an Islamic Taqiya is the Islamic doctrine, and I've got it pulled up here on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not normally a scholarly source, but I had known about this doctrine, Taqiya, and in fact, the Catholic Church adopts this doctrine as well, which I find it odd that Michael Knowles' response to "Would you give a blowjob to a man if it saves all the lives in the world?" Um, I find it odd that he said no, because my research into the Catholic Church, they believe at least some form of Taqiya. In Islam, Taqiya, literally prudence, fear, is a precautionary dissimulation. There's that word again. We're going to talk about dissimulation before we stop today. Or denial of religious belief and practice. Generally, Taqiya is the action of committing a sinful act, such as feigning unbelief for a pious goal. There's a related term, kitman, if I'm pronouncing that right. It's action of covering or dissimulation, which is more specific meaning, which has a more specific meaning of dissimulation by silence or omission. The practice is emphasized in, again, shazim, whereby adherents are permitted to conceal their religion when under the threat of persecution or compulsion. Taqiya was initially practiced under duress by some of Muhammad's companions. Later, it became particularly important for, again, sorry about the pronunciation of these words, Shias, due to their experience as a persecuted religious minority. According to Shia doctrine, Taqiya is permissible in situation where there is overwhelming danger of loss of life or property, or where no danger to religion would occur thereby. Taqiya has also been politically legitimized, particularly among name I don't need to try to pronounce, in order to maintain unity among Muslims and fraternity among Shia, among the Shia clerics. Anyway, that's all we need. This idea of justifying sin, this idea of graded morality, is the foundation of the Islamic doctrine of Taqiya. Now, through a conversation with a man in the We Talk Truth group last night, he talked to me for quite a while, and he came around and he started to understand, and he made the point. He said, it seems like none of us are ever going to be in a state where, uh, or in a situation. He talked about being in his 50s, where we're going to be in the situation of having to choose between lying and someone dying. And of course, I knocked that out of the water. I have been in that situation where if it would have been very easy for me to lie, I had to be very careful with my words. Okay. I never lied, but I had to be careful with my words. If I was not careful with my words, then one person would have been potentially killed, and many others would have lost their livelihoods. So yeah, don't just because you can't place yourself in a particular scenario and you can't see yourself ever being in a situation like that, don't discount the fact that people do find themselves in situations like that. But the reason conversations like this are important is not because you're going to be hiding people and the Gestapo are going to come. It's you're going to be forced to make a decision between a job that pays 100,000 a year, but you have to compromise one of your morals, versus a job that only pays 50,000 a year, but you don't have to compromise one of your morals. What do you do? Well, if I believe that I can compromise my morals, if I believe that I can dissimulate with my faith in order for the greater good, then I may well compromise my character. I may well dissimulate. That's why these conversations are important. Now, let's talk about dissimulation. In the King James Bible, let me do this search for dissimulation. The word dissimulation is found twice, okay? Romans 12:9, let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil, cleave to that which is good. All right. So dissimulation. Anupokritos. And this is the same word that is found in James chapter 3, verse 17. But before we go to James chapter 3, verse 17, let's go to Galatians chapter 2, and let me give you the verse 13. And the other Jews dissembled likewise with him, that's Paul, insomuch that Barnabas also was carried away with their dissimulation. All right. So let me see. But when Peter was come, I'm going to start reading in verse 11 of Galatians chapter 2. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face because he was to be blamed. For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles. But when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. And the other Jews dissembled likewise with him, insomuch that the Barnabas also was carried away with their dissimulation. But when I saw that they walked not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, I said unto Peter before them all, if thou being a Jew livest after the manner of Gentiles and not as do the Jews, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? We're not going to talk about all the implications of that, but we see that what was going on here is Peter stopped emulating the gospel and started emulating the precepts of the law of Moses, which one was you got to eat with Jews. All right. Dissimulation. Now, here the word dissimulation in Galatians chapter 2, verse 13, translate a word that we're very familiar with, hypokrisis. It's hypocrite, hypocrisy. Okay. But a cognate of that word, all right, is in James chapter 3, verse 17, and it's translated hypocrisy. But it's the same word in Romans 12, verse 9, and a cognate of the same word in Galatians 2, verse 13, that's translated dissimulation. Okay. So listen to this. We're going to go to James chapter 3. I'm going to start reading in verse 15. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly and sensual and devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But, so to the contrary, the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then it's peaceable, gentle, easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Folks, it's without dissimulation. Wisdom from above is, let me, anupokritos. Anupokritos. It is basically the word hypocrisy negated. Okay. So it is without hypocrisy, or it's without dissimulation. And the definition of the term is to decide to speak or act under a false part, to take up another statements in reference to what one has decided for oneself, to impersonate, to play a part, to feign, to pretend, to simulate, to assume a counterfeit character, to pretend, to feign. Let me get us the dictionary definition of dissimulation. This is why dissimulation is used. Concealment of one's thoughts or feelings or character, pretense. Now, Christian, what is your profession? What is your vocation? What is your character? We are to be holy as God is holy. We cannot dissimulate. The wisdom that is from above is first pure, then it's peaceable. It's without dissimulation. If it is the case that I can justify sin in order to accomplish the greater good, then you are stating that I can and I am allowed to dissimulate. I cannot dissimulate. That is not wisdom from above that is peaceable. That the wisdom that allows a person to dissimulate in that scenario, that is wisdom that is from man. That is wisdom that is not pure, and it is not peaceable. We need to study this word, and we need to adopt this word into our everyday vocabulary. Dissimulation. So again, we cannot practice situational ethics. We cannot condone graded morality. If it is the case that innocent people die all the time. There's nothing new. I'm not going to trade my soul for the life of anybody. That would be wrong. That would be dissimulation. All right. Was Abraham dishonest about Sarah being his sister or his wife, which she was, since she was both? This is one of those situations that where Abraham told the truth, but it was like the illustration I gave, the second part, he was nefarious. It wasn't the fact that he said, she's my sister. It's the fact that he didn't say, she's my wife, when it called for it. And that whole situation turned out to be bad. He was nefarious. He was cowardly, and he showed a lack of faith. All right. It was nefarious, but the deceit was amoral. It's all the other stuff surrounding it that got him in trouble. I hope that's a good enough explanation for you. I'm trying to be really careful with the time here. Peter Wandara says, very glad to hear you on Romans. I really love this letter, which to me is the constitution for Christianity. Never thought about it like that. It is especially Romans 12. Man, it's the Romans 12, 13, 14, and 15 through 15:7 is definitely the constitution for Christianity, if nothing else in the book is. So yeah, good stuff. So what have let's see, let me look at we have talked about situational ethics, we've talked about lying, we've talked about dissimulation, and we've talked about this principle of Taqiya. Folks, we cannot. We have to follow this principle. We cannot do evil that good may come. Rahab the harlot lied. Lying is sin. Evidently, she found absolution and she's in Faith Hall of Fame, but she still lied. If you want to take the chance with your soul, then I guess you're able to do that. Now, the question is asked, Tony, what would you do if you were in the situation where Jews were hiding in your attic and the Gestapo came to the door? All right, knock, knock, knock. We're the Gestapo. You got any Jews? You know that I'm not a Jewish sympathizer. And you know what? I'm not. So that's true. But I'm still going to try my best to protect innocent life. Knock, knock, knock. You got any Jews in the attic? You got any Jews in your house, rather? Why would you think that there are Jews here? You know I'm not a Jewish sympathizer. You know it's not in my character to go against the government. All of that is true. I've not lied, and I'm deflecting. There are ways to handle this, and we need to be practiced in those ways. Our baseline needs to be the same baseline as God. You see, we don't need to dissimulate, we need to emulate. What would Jesus do in that situation? One of the guys I was talking to last night actually brought up times where Jesus didn't want to answer the question because the question was hanging him on the horns of a dilemma. Well, what would Jesus do if Jesus had Jews in the attic? Well, Jesus was a Jew, so that would be kind of a mess. But you understand what I mean. What would Jesus do? Knock, knock, knock. You got any Jews in the attic? We're going to kill them if you do. Why would you think that I would hide Jews in there? Like he would say, he would not lie, I guess is what I'm trying to say. His baseline would be telling the truth. We need to emulate Jesus. We need to be practiced at it. Because you're going to come to a point in your life, if you haven't already, where you have the choice to emulate or to dissimulate. And it's going to cost you or somebody something. Ethics based on the morality of God do not change according to the situation. All right. Let me look at some other stuff here. Let me get to my trusty rusty e-sword. I'll go to 2 Kings 6, and we'll stop this at the hour and 30-minute mark. So remember, 2 Kings 6, regardless of what we're going to find here, I don't understand what I'm supposed to be looking for in 2 Kings 6. There's an axe head recovered, there's horses of chariots and fire, and there's Ben-Hadad's siege of Samaria. I don't see. So I was told, don't forget to address Elisha in 2 Kings 6. I don't know if there's anything to address. And the sons of the prophets said unto Elisha, behold, now the place where we dwell with thee is too strait for us. Let us go, we pray thee, unto Jordan, and take thence every man a beam, and let us make us a place there that we may dwell. And he answered, go ye. All right. And one said, be content, I pray thee, and go with thy servants. And he answered, so he went with them. And when they came to Jordan, they cut down wood. But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he cried and said, alas, master, for it was borrowed. And the man of God said, Where fell it? And he showed him the place, and he cut down a stick and cast it in thither, and the iron did swim. Therefore said he, Take it up to thee, and he put it out. And he put out his hand and took it. He lied to the army. Where? What verse? The king of Syria warred against Israel and took counsel with his servants, saying, In such and such a place shall be my camp. And the man of God sent unto the king of Israel, saying, Beware that thou pass not such a place, for thither the Syrians are come down. And the king of Israel sent to the place which the man of God told him, and warned him of, and saved himself there, not once nor twice. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was sore troubled, for the thing. Oh, hold on, I lost my place. For this thing, and he called his servants and said unto him, Will ye not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, None, my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet that is in Israel, telleth the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber. So Elisha tells the words that the kings think is private. And he said, Go and spy where he is, that I may send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, Behold, he is in Dothan. Therefore he sent their horses and chariots and a great host, and they came by night and compassed the city about. And when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, an host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. And his servant said unto him, Alas, my master, how shall we do? And he answered, Fear not, they that be with us are more than they that be with them. And Elisha prayed. Okay, we know what happens here. And when they came down to him, Elisha prayed unto the Lord and said, Smite this people, I pray thee, with blindness. And he smote them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. And Elisha said unto them, This is not the way, neither is this the city. Follow me, and I will say to you, and I will bring you to the men whom you seek. But he led him to Samaria. And it came to pass, when they were come into Samaria, that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men, and that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. And the king of Israel said unto Elisha, He saw them, My father, shall I smite them? Shall I smite them? And he answered, Thou shalt not smite them. Wouldest thou smite those whom thou hadst taken captive with thy sword and with the bow? Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink and go to their master. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong here. I'm assuming you're talking about verse 18 or 19, where Elijah said to this army that was made blind, This is not the way, neither is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria. So this is subterfuge. That there's no reason to interpret this as an outright lie. This is subterfuge. What the definition of terms and what Elisha means by his statements is not the definition of terms and how the Samaritans interpret the statements. Okay, but let's say that this is 100% a lie. Elisha sinned. Why? Because you cannot do evil that good may come. Do you think this is the first prophet? If this is a lie, do you think this is the first prophet that ever sinned and still remained a prophet? Do you think this is the first prophet who sinned and God still used him? God gives to all men liberally and upbraideth not, James chapter 1. And the spirit of the prophets is subject to the prophets. So the prophets had control over their gift. So if it is the case that Elijah did lie here, which is not self-evident, but let's say he did, you still have to interpret it through Romans 3:8. that doing good or doing evil that good may come is worthy of condemnation. So yeah, that's it. That's how he explained that. This foolishness. It's kind of like the abortion debate. Is abortion wrong? Well, yes. Abortion is murder, and nobody should abort their baby at any stage of development. But then a group of people say, "Well, what about rape and incest?" Okay, so let's say then that rape and incest, we make an exception, a legal, not a moral, but a legal exception for rape and incest. Would you be okay with outlawing all other abortion? Well, the answer is no. It kind of puts me in mind of that, the way people argue this. They always, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? My response is always going to be, we cannot do evil that good may come. That's it. Well, what about this? Can't do evil that good may come. Here's the thing. I don't know that Elisha did do evil, but let's say that he did. That was not virtuous, and it was counter to God's will. He shouldn't have done it. You see, 2 Kings is a book of history. Genesis is a book of history. Joshua is a book of history. David tried to concoct the lie using Uriah that didn't work. Hold on, just Sheila. I got to lean it. Absolutely. David tried to concoct the lie using Uriah that didn't work and then had him killed. Yet he is called a man after God's own heart. Yeah, David also had more than one wife. David did a lot of things he wasn't supposed to do. But yet he's still in Faith Hall of Fame. He's still called a man after God's own heart. He had a penitent attitude. Again, let's say Elisha flat out lied, and there's no other way to interpret it. That doesn't mean you and I can do this. Why? Because we can't do evil that good may come. So why, whenever we talk about lying, situational ethics, dissimulation, and Taqiya, do people always go, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? The what about this is answered with Romans 3:8. People who claim that you can do evil that good may come are worthy of condemnation. And then we're not allowed to dissimulate. Dissimulation is sinful. Professing to be something you're not is sinful. Genesis 12:11-20. Terry, you talking about? Yeah, I answered that earlier. Let me deal with it again. Was Abraham dishonest about Sarah being his sister or his wife, or was she both, or since she was both? Yeah. So this is one of those situations where the problem with Abraham's action is not that he said Sarah is my sister. It's that he should have said Sarah is my wife, because Abraham abdicated his role as husband and protector and kind of set Sarah out there to the dogs. It made her very vulnerable, and it could have been really, really bad if God hadn't have intervened. If you'll read that account, God actually intervened. All right, in order to preserve Sarah. And again, that's Abraham didn't lie, but Abraham did wrong. So that's the only way I can. That's the only thing I can talk about when it comes to that. That's right. You cannot use sins committed in Scripture to justify sins. That is exactly right, Sheila. Yeah. Again, let's say Elisha flat out lied. So what? Can you do evil that good may come? Can you cast off the shackles of your faith in order to operate in such a way as to not be persecuted in this world? The answer is no. That is dissimulation. I think I've covered it, folks. And I don't know why in the world this pops up all the time. We cannot do evil that good may come. Romans chapter 3 in its context is talking about something very specific. But then when you get to Romans chapter 3, verse 8, that just like Paul does very often, he gives the general application. He gives you an application that you can lift off its page and it stands alone. Can we say we can do evil that good may come? And some people accuse us of that. But the peoples that say that we can do evil that good may come, they're worthy of condemnation. Don't be worthy of condemnation. Folks, I don't know what else I can say on the matter. I told you we'd quit at the hour and 30-minute mark. Terry Crooks, I hope I answered your question about Genesis 12 and Abraham. He didn't lie, but he did wrong because he violated a lot of stuff in that scenario. But one thing he didn't violate was lie. He didn't honor his wife. He didn't protect his wife. He didn't trust God. Incidentally, let me end with this. Awesome, Terry. Thank you so much. Let me end with this. Telling the truth is the fundamental action of trust in God. Sanctify them by thy truth. Thy word is truth. The logos, the divine logos, logic. We have to speak forth words that are commensurate with the divine logos. We speak words that are true. That's why the podcast that Brock Kendall and Aaron Dotson and myself did, I titled it "We Talk Truth." Like there was a reason for that title. We talk truth because that's what God talks. We are emulating God. The foundation of trust in God is speaking the truth. If you speak the truth, which all truth is God's truth, and you trust in God, then whatever happens, whatever falls out because of your speaking the truth is the best case scenario that could have happened. And it shows your trust in God. For instance, if somebody has a sword to your neck and they say, "Are you a Christian? Do you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God?" Yes, I do. If they lop your head off, it shows you've trusted God and that is the absolute best possible outcome in that situation that could have happened. If the Gestapo knocks on your door and says, "Are there Jews in the attic?" and you say, "There are no Jews here for you," that's a true statement. Are you hiding Jews in your attic? I'm not. Or are you hiding Jews in the house? I'm not hiding Jews in the house. Are there any Jews? Can you see any Jews in the house? That's perfectly fine. You haven't lied. Now, if they say, "Well, we're going to come in and search anyway," well, you're gonna die. And sometimes good people die because of evil people. Didn't you read? All who will live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. Do you think you're going to get through this world following Christ and be unscathed? God forbid. All right. So trust in God, tell the truth, regardless of the outcome. You don't understand. I don't think anybody understands exactly how formidable they will be if they always tell the truth. I always tell the truth. I don't ever lie. Even when it cost me, even when it cost people I love. Now, I'm discreet. I'm not stupid with it. I'm not a blabbermouth. If a cop pulls me over and he says, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I don't care if I was going 120 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. You know what my response is gonna be? "I don't know why you pulled me over. I've got a good guess, but I don't know for sure. So I'm not going to say that I know." And that's the truth, but it also protects me. Be formidable. Always tell the truth. Emulate God. Tell the truth. It's not your responsibility for how people interpret the truth you tell. God always tells the truth. It's not his responsibility for your interpretation of it. And that's all I've got. God bless y'all. If y'all have listened this long, if you find value in my podcast, consider supporting us monetarily so we can do more of them and bring you more content. On Wednesdays, I put out a member exclusive video. If you're following us on Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee, then Wednesdays you have a member exclusive video or other piece of content that'll come out. Aaron Dotson is also going to start putting out content for our members, our supporters. If you scan the QR code, you'll be able to go and you'll be able to find it. I'm going to cut off, but that's www.patreon.com/Christianity Now, www.buymeacoffee/Christianity Now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Uh, I'm very pleased with the amount of people tuned in. If you will be the algorithm for us and you will share this with your friends, then it will help us out greatly. God bless you. Remember, don't dissimulate. Let your faith be without hypocrisy or dissimulation, for that is sin. Don't think that you can lie or sin given the situation. You cannot. That's all we've got here. God bless you. This has been Tony Brewer with Cogitations, and we will catch you on the strip, on the flip side.